Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Venus and it has been a while. It's been almost 2 months, but I am back. I took a little holiday break. No real reason, just didn't feel like filming. But I'm back, and of course this is the perfect time because I get to talk about all of my favorite books from 2024. So because I've been on such a little break, I decided to talk about my top 20 favorite books. There's going to be 10 honorable mentions and then my top 10 of 2024. I've read 111 books as of today. There's still like 2 days left in December. You never know what could happen. There's a mix of genres because I read a little bit of everything. So there's fantasy, there's sci-fi, there's romance, horror. I think there's only one horror book on this list of 20, which is crazy because that was the second or top most read genre for me this year. But they've all been like a lot of 3 stars, but we'll talk about that in my like disappointing worst video, DNF, blah, blah, blah video. Today is all about the favorites. We are going to kick it off with honorable mentions, and the first one is The Season of Scandal by Julie Ann Long. This is a book I haven't talked about on my channel. I think I read it in like November. Yeah, I'm pretty sure in November. It's a historical romance book, which in my 20s, that's pretty much all I read for quite a while. Like I was obsessed with them. And I haven't really read that many of them recently, and I kept seeing this book on a lot of people's favorites list. So I figured I would give it a try, and it's definitely well deserved. So in this book, we are following, I don't remember her name. I got this from the library. She is a country girl. She's living in the country. Obviously, this is historical romance, so it's set in like this, I don't even know, like 1800s maybe, where the London season is very prominent for women to get husbands. And this young woman lives in the country, so she's not very versed on the season. She doesn't have like all of the fashion that everyone else has. And I am really going to try not to go into deep detail about all these books now that I'm thinking about it, because there's 20 of them. So let's hurry this up. Country girl, she goes to London season to try to find herself a husband. And of course, there is a well-known rake who she bumps into accidentally. And then, of course, it's a slow burn, and it is so well written, and the romance is so delicate, and there's not like unnecessary like smut in it. It's well placed. I don't even think there is a not graphic, but open door sex scene in this. I don't remember. If it is, it's very light. I loved it. I love the romance between these two characters. It just gave me all of the feels, and I definitely am going to be reading more from this author. Next up is a short story collection, which I don't normally like, but this is Sharp Ends by Joe Abercrombie. This is part of the standalones between the First Law trilogy and the Age of Madness trilogy, and I had to finish this before I started on the Age of Madness trilogy, which I'll be doing in 2025. But I love this. We revisit some of the characters from the First Law trilogy. Then there's some new characters. There's a bunch of obviously short stories, some of them intertwined, some of them are very much standalone. Some of them are just characters from, like I said, the First Law trilogy, where you get to see them a little bit more in detail of who they were before. For example, Glatka, you get a little glimpse of who he was before he became who he was in the First Law trilogy. So I loved it. Next up is The Love of My Afterlife by Christy Greenwood. This is a book I haven't talked about on my channel. I think I read it in like October or November, but I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. In this book, we are following Delphi, I think her name is Delphi, and she chokes on a cheeseburger. So this book is over the top, so suspend your belief. She chokes on a cheeseburger. She ends up in the afterlife, and she runs into who she thinks would have been the love of her life in real life. He ends up not dying, so she gets to go back. Am I spoiling anything when I say all this? No, I'm not. Okay. So she gets the opportunity to go back to live her life, and if she finds him and they fall in love, then she can stay alive. And a whole bunch of things occur. It's just so heartwarming. Delphi is very much, I could relate to her because she's antisocial. She doesn't really have any friends. And through this book, she realizes that certain relationships are needed, and it's just very heartwarming. There's a romance in it, obviously, and I loved it. Next up, another book I haven't talked about on my channel is The Outsider by Stephen King. I read this, I believe, in November or October, and I loved it. I think I gave this one 4.5 stars because it's Stephen King. Sometimes it's just too long. But other than that, I really love the story. This is about a young boy who is found murdered, and the town or the sheriff in this town assumes that it is a very well loved like coach. I think he's like a little league coach, might even be a teacher too. I can't remember, but he is accused of it, and the town and the events that happen towards this coach and the craziness that ensues was so good. I could not put this book down. I don't want to give too much away. There's also a crossover to another character in some of his other books that I was not aware of. So if you haven't read that many Stephen King books and you definitely want to, you might just want to check out the connections between a character in this book in case you don't want to be spoiled. I was fine with it when this person showed up, but I wasn't prepared. But I loved this. A surprise book for me that I really enjoyed was Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. This is about a young woman who gets pregnant from a one night stand, and you follow her and her journey through this. And it's been God, I feel like I read this like a really long time ago. I'm not somebody who really loves like the whole pregnancy trope, but I thought that it was really well done in this. There isn't like baby daddy drama. I thought that the way the story handled the relationship and how she was going to deal with having this baby and telling her family and her best friend who struggles with fertility, there's a situation with that. And the love interest in this is so adorable. And it was a great, fun time. And the author did pregnancy smut very well. I was very much impressed. So I had to put this, and this cover is gorgeous. It's so perfect for spring. I had to put this on my list. Next up is Caliban's War by James S.A. Corey. This is the second book in the Expanse sci-fi series, and I absolutely love this. I think I love this one more than the first book because there is a character in this, a female character in this who was fantastic. She was hilarious. She took no shit from all of the male counterparts in her field of business. I'm not going to give too much away because it's the second book, but I thought it was brilliantly done. I could not put this down. This is a chunker, and I loved every single word of it. So can't wait to continue on with the Expanse series. This is very much space opera. There's aliens, there's Mars, Earth, different planets, spaceships, interplanetary conflict, all the things, and it was fantastic. Next up, another book that I haven't talked about on my channel, I think I just read this in November or December, is The Silver Blood Promise by James Logan. This is a fantasy book, and I loved it so much. This is about Logan. He's like a card shark, kind of like I don't want to say con artist, but he knows how to get around things. We'll say that. He's estranged from his father. Something happened to him when he was younger, and he left his family and just kind of drifted for a while. And he finds out that his father was murdered. And he makes a promise to find out what happened to him. And you go on the journey with him. And I feel like it's like one of those fantasy books where he's given kind of a mission or given information, and then he has to go to the next place, and then he finds out something there, and it moves him to the next place. So it's kind of like one of those fantasy books. But I ate it up. I had a great time with this. The audiobook was fantastic, and I can't wait to read the second book, which I think comes out in 2025. And then we have All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. This was such a cute small town romance. I read it almost a year ago. It's been a very long time, so my brain is a little foggy on this, but I just remember the main character. She moves into like a little house in the back of her land yard's main property, and he is 100% grumpy, and she is very much sunshine. So this is the grumpy sunshine trope. It's done very, very well. It's a slow burn. It's very much small town vibes. I feel like it's like in a Colorado or somewhere very similar to that. And it just pulled in my heartstrings. I really, really love this book, and I definitely want to read more of this author as well. Another romance that I ate up is The Idea of You, and this is by Robin Lee. This was also a movie on Netflix that came out recently this year with Anne Hathaway. I thought it was pretty much well done. I definitely love the book more. But in this book, we are following a mom who at the last minute has to take her teenage daughter to a boy band concert, and they have like the meet and greet backstage passes, and she feels some vibes from the main singer in this group, and the things evolve, and it goes on a crazy adventure of her, like she's in her 40s, I think, and he's probably like 20, 23. I can't remember that. It's a very much age gap romance. And it was a fun time. I loved this book. I really did. I think If you think of like, I know it's compared to a lot of times, think of Harry Styles falling in love with like a 40-year-old mom, and she gets to like travel with him during the concert. But all of the drama that ensues from that, from his vicious fans and his bandmates. So, God, this book I could definitely read again, 100%. And the final honorable mention is Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. We are only through my honorable mentions. This is going to be a long video, but you know how I do. I come back from breaks and it's like a 45-minute video. I missed you guys. In this book, we are following Misha. He is an Oscar nominated screenwriter, I believe, or producer. And his executives, his higher ups, have decided that they do not want him to continue with the gay romance that he has in his series, and they want him to kill off his gay character. And he's like, "No, I'm not doing that. I'm not burying my gays. I'm not doing that trope. I don't believe in that. We're not doing that." And so they threaten him. And we go on this journey, and you find like characters from horror books that he used to write, or horror movies that he used to write, are popping up in weird places, and you don't know if he's imagining it or not. And it is a fun time. I loved this book. I think this is the only horror book that's on my list of favorites for 2024. The gore is done so good in this. The kills are done great. It's a big fu to Hollywood and homophobia. It is very much inclusive. The queer spectrum is represented in this book so well, and I am definitely going to read more of Chuck Tingle. Is that his name? Yes, Chuck Tingle. I love this book, so I highly recommend it. I'm loving that I'm seeing this on other people's lists of favorites for 2024, and it is well deserved. Now we are getting into my top 10. These aren't necessarily in any order because they're different genres, they have different vibes, but they are definitely my favorite books of 2024. I will say the top two are definitely my top two favorite books of 2024. So let's jump into it. Next up is The Women by Kristen Hanna. This is a historical fiction book. I think this might be my first, this is my first Kristen Hanna book that I've ever read. I've heard about this author. She is an author well known for making you cry. I definitely cried reading this book. I really connected with it because the main character is a nurse, and she is a nurse during Vietnam. And I had no idea the struggles that nurses had during that time. They weren't even recognized as being war heroes when they came back from Vietnam. So you follow her through that. There's, of course, like a romance that's thread throughout this story. We follow her going into Vietnam as a brand new, fresh nurse with basically very minimal experience. And I can't even imagine being thrown into the environment that she's thrown into and the experiences that she has to deal with, and the people that she's surrounded by when you're in those experiences, life or death experiences. The people who you surround yourself with are like family. They immediately become family. And what she deals with when she comes back from Vietnam with her family, and US government situation that's going on in general, and how women were treated, and PTSD, and all of the things. It was just very well written, and it was amazing. I loved it, and I can't wait to read more of her books, definitely. Then we have If Something Happens to Me by Alex Finlay. I don't have a physical copy of this book. I believe I got it as an ARC, but I need to get a physical copy because I am loving all of the books that I'm reading by him. This book is over the top. A lot of people didn't like it. It's a thriller book. We are following a young man who, when he is younger, he is on like a date with his girlfriend. They're in a car, and he is ripped out of the car, and the car goes missing, and his girlfriend is missing as well. And then many years later, he is dealing with, being accused basically of killing his girlfriend, but there's no body that's found. So he leaves the country, goes to, I think, law school. I can't remember. And he's in Italy, and all of a sudden, things from that night are coming back to haunt him. And you follow different POVs. There's a detective, a deputy detective, I think, a mobster, his lawyer, I believe. Sorry, it's been a while since I read this book. But there's different POVs, and I couldn't figure out how they were going to merge together. I thought it was fantastic. It's very, like I said, over the top, high action, fun times. You're going through different countries. I think you start in Italy, there's Paris, there's different countries, there's Philadelphia. I think, God, it's terrible. I'm sorry. I can't remember. But just know that I had a fantastic time reading this. And I have an arc for his next book coming out next year, 2025. And I cannot wait to read it because I'm loving all of his books. Then we have another thriller, Kill for Me, Kill for You by Steve Kavanaugh. This is like a psychological thriller that I loved. It was so good. In this book, we are following two women who meet, I don't want to say by chance, but they end up meeting because of certain circumstances. And they both realize that they have lost loved ones, and the people that were the cause of them losing their loved ones, I'll say, I'm trying not to spoil anything, are still running loose. And they're very upset about that. So they come up with a scheme or a plan to, if you kill for me, then I'll kill for you. And it was great. And it was so well done. It was fast paced. It kept me guessing. I literally had no idea what was going to happen. There's a third character in this, third POV in this as well, of a woman who is assaulted and she ends up living through that assault. And you follow her, and these characters collide at the end, and it was so good. So, so good. This was my first Steve Kavanaugh book. I can't wait to read more of this author as well. This was just fantastic. One of my favorite thrillers probably of all time. Next up is California Bear by Duane Swierczynski. Hopefully I'm saying his name right. This is a thriller. I wish more people were talking about it. I loved this book so, so much. I thought it was very well written. In this book, we are following four vigilantes. We're following Jack Queen, who is in prison and for something, I won't say what it is, but he is exonerated and freed by an ex-cop named Cato, who is just the craziest character. I loved his character so much. And Jack is like, but I did it. And he's like, no shit, but I have a plan for you. We've got some business to take care of. And there is a serial killer who has been kind of a cold case. No one can figure out who it is. They call him the California Bear. He murdered many people, and no one's ever been able to find out who he was. And so we have, of course, this TV show is trying to put together, reenact his murders and figure out where he went and what happened to him. And we also follow a woman who is married to Cato. It's a funny dynamic between them, but she is a genealogist and she puts together like family trees. I know this is kind of sounding all over the place, but trust me, it comes together so brilliantly. And then we also have a young girl who has leukemia. She's in the hospital, but she likes to try to figure out cold cases. So all of these characters merge together, and it is a fun time. It is a very much fun time. The California Bear himself is also a hot mess. And there is a scene with him with a donut and a pool that I will never forget. It is forever singed in my brain. This book was so entertaining, and I definitely want to read more from this author. Next up, we have Savor It. This is by Tara DeWitt. This is a romance book that I loved. It gave me all the feels. It is funny, it's heartwarming, it's got sexy time in it, but it's not overly done. It's like the perfect amount of spice. In this book, we are following Sage. She lives in a very small town in Oregon. I think I'm learning that I love small town romance books. She is kind of living on her own. She's got a farm with all these like crazy animals on it, and she has I think two brothers that are very much involved in her life, and her ex is all of a sudden engaged. So she's going through it, and she's determined to beat him. There's like some like town festival competition thing, and she really wants to beat him just to get back at him. And then the male love interest, he is a Michelin star chef who lost his sister and is now taking care of his niece. And he moves to this small town to open up a restaurant. And he ends up renting the house that's next to her farm. And their meet cute is so hilarious. And things go from there. They end up doing fake dating, and it's fun. It's fun. Next up is Kindred by Octavia Butler. This is my first time reading Octavia Butler, and I read this in one sitting. This book was so good. It's sci-fi, and it was so engaging, and it had so much commentary in it, and I loved it. I ate it up. I'm not going to try to summarize this myself because I read this in February. So this says Dana, a 20th century Black woman, is celebrating her 26th birthday with her new husband when she is snatched from her home in California and transported to the antebellum South. Rufus, the white son of a plantation owner, is drowning, and Dana has been summoned to save him, repeatedly drawn back through time, and with each stay growing longer and more perilous. Dana is forced to contend with the brutal legacy of slavery and white supremacy, not knowing if her life will end long before it has a chance to begin. The way this story is written, it's very much sci-fi, but it also has those elements of slavery and prejudice and all of the horrible things that happened in antebellum South. But the way that this is done, you really get to know the characters, and it's like you don't know what the hell is up with Rufus, why she has to keep coming back to save this man. Is he even worth being saved? How their history ties together. It was just such a great story, and I, like I said, couldn't put it down. Definitely can't wait to read more from Octavia Butler, and this book absolutely had to make my top 10 of 2024. Next up, we have Funny Story by Emily Henry. I'm so glad that I'm actually connecting with Emily Henry again, because the last two books before this I did not like at all, but I very much loved Beach Read and People We Meet on Vacation. So I was so excited to give her a book 5 stars because it felt like it had been a while. And this book is a very crazy premise. So we are following a woman who is engaged, and she finds out that he ends up really falling in love with his like longtime best friend from like his whole life. Decides that he is no longer wants to get engaged and wants to be with this woman he's known his whole life. Who actually ends up being, I can't remember if they were engaged or just dating. How do I even explain this? Like, so the woman that her ex ends up dating is the girlfriend or fiance of Miles, who is the love interest in this book. And so they're both going through it, and they end up having to be roommates because she gets kicked out of her apartment with him, her ex, and he has a room. And the beginning of this book had me laughing so hard because of what Miles is doing. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to spoil it, but he is hilarious. I felt like he was such a cinnamon roll. He was so endearing. I loved his character. I think that's really what made this story is I loved his character. And it was just a great journey. I love this book. I can barely remember it though. That's sad. I just remember Miles. Oh, Daphne is the name of the main character, and she was a librarian. That's right. I loved that too. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, Daphne is very much like buttoned up and stays to herself, and Miles is the exact opposite of her. So, yeah, I love this book. It was so good. I know it sounds like I don't remember much of it, but like it's been a very long time since I've read it. So, but I do remember loving this. So this had to make my list as well. Then we have The Will of Many that everyone has been talking about, and I kept putting off reading it, and I finally read it, I want to say in November. This is by James Islington, and I freaking love this book. It is fantasy, and I'm not even going to try to summarize it. I'm just going to read the inside of this because this story has so much, and I don't want to spoil anything if I start talking too much about it. So this is the safest bet for you guys. The Contented Republic, the hierarchy, may rule the world now, but they do not know everything. I tell them my name is Telemus. I tell them I was orphaned after a tragic accident 3 years ago, and that good fortune alone has led me to my acceptance into their most prestigious school. I tell them that once I graduate, I will gladly join the rest of civilized society, and allowing my strength, my drive, and my focus that they call will to be leached away and added to the power of those above me, as millions already do, as all must eventually do. So in this society, people can have a certain amount of other people beneath them and like basically like suck their will out of them, and it gives them power. So well done. I tell them that I belong and they believe me. But the truth is that I have been sent to the academy to find answers, to solve a murder, to search for an ancient weapon, to uncover secrets that may tear the Republic apart, and that I will never ever cede my will to the empire that executed my family. To survive, though, I will still have to rise through the academy's ranks. I will have to smile and make friends and pretend to be one of them and win. Because if I cannot, then those who want to control me, who know my real name, will no longer have any use for me. And if the hierarchy finds out who I truly am, they will kill me. This book was so good. It's so many things going on, so it's very hard for me to summarize it again without spoiling anything. All I'm going to say is that it is very well written. I found the pacing to be very good. There was a couple like very minute moments where I was kind of like, okay, this is dragging on a little bit. But other than that, I thought it was great. And the ending, what the heck? The ending was insane. So cannot wait for the second book that comes out in 2025. Okay, time for my top two favorite books of 2024. First up is The Ascent by Adam Platinga. I've talked about this book many times on my channel. It needs more love. I need you guys to read this. This is a thriller. It is gruesome. It's violent, but it's a good time. Let me get comfortable, okay? Because we're going to talk about this book. In this book, we are following Kurt Argento. He is an ex-cop. His wife just passed away. He's going through it. He has a dog, and they travel because something happens. He becomes an ex-cop for a reason. It's in the beginning. And they travel just to get out of town, try to clear his head. And he ends up coming across this man who drags this young girl into the woods. It's at like some festival or something, and he's getting ready to rape her, brutalize her, God knows what else. So he beats the shit out of him. Little does he know, he's in a corrupt town. Some things unfold, and he ends up being thrown into prison. I don't want to spoil it. I'm trying to say what's in the inside cover. And we follow Julie, who is the governor's daughter, and she decides for school or whatever project she has going on. Yeah, she's a grad student. She is touring this prison on the same day that Argento is imprisoned. And she's got like, I think 2 or 3 like bodyguards, security guards with her. So very quickly you realize in the story, Argento realizes that the damn cell doors are starting to open and the prisoners are leaking out into common community areas in the prison. And they have to try to get to the top of this prison, the roof of this prison, so they can get help, so they can get out of this situation. And in this prison, it's called the Ascent because there are, how many floors is it? 6. There are 6 floors of top security felons, and they have to go through every floor to get to the roof, obviously. And each floor has different levels of insanity, different levels of prisoners based on their crimes. So the bottom floor is like the least criminal, and the top floor is the like criminally insane, terrifying, absolutely out of like their mind criminals that Argento has to get all of them through. So he's getting himself, some of the staff, security guards who are overworked and underpaid mostly, to get them to the roof. And it is so good. It is fast paced. It is brutal. Like I said, it's very gruesome. Please check trigger warnings if you have any triggers. I always say this when I mention this book, but there is a human canoe scene that I will never forget. And I'm so excited because this author has written another book. I believe it's called Hardtown. It comes out next year. I have an arc of it. I cannot wait to read it. I'm like saving it. I'm like savoring it until the perfect moment. And I'm pretty sure it's a sequel to this, or it's following Argento. Yeah, I think it's a sequel. And I'm hoping it becomes a series. But please read this. Please, because it's so good. If that sounds like something you like. I mean, like I said, it's definitely for an acquired taste because it's gruesome, it's brutal, it follows a cop. If you don't like thrillers that have cops in it, obviously you won't like this. We're in a prison. For the setting is obviously the same setting the entire time mostly, but it's so good. It's so good. Please read this. I loved it. My second favorite book of 2024. And my favorite book of 2024 is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. I love this book. I still think about it. I'm ready to do a reread. The second book of this also comes out in 2025. And I'm so excited. I got an arc of that too. I don't know what fairies have blessed me with all of these arcs, but I'm very excited. This is a fantasy book, and it's so funny because this author's last fantasy series I DNF'd because I felt like he went in too much detail with the magic system and it was pulling away from the characters and the storyline. I think it was called Foundry Side. This book had the perfect mix of characters, fantasy, world building, dialogue, all of the things. I want more of the world, funny enough, in this book. We have Leviathans, the creatures in this story that circle this world, and the poor people are on the outer rings of the, I don't know what you want to call it, country or land, on the outer rings, and then the more wealthy are more inland because they're further away from the Leviathans. We don't get that much detail about the Leviathans in this book. Hopefully we'll get more into it, but it's mentioned and it's just fascinating to me. Plant life is very much a central part of like the magic system in this. So in this book, we are following, I think his name is Din, and he is the assistant to a lead investigator. Her name is Anna. She is very much eccentric. She is so bizarre. She blindfolds herself. I guess it gives her a more sense of figuring out crime scenes. I don't know. She's just, think Holmes, definitely, like that weird eccentric personality. And then we have Din, who is like young, very naive, but he has special powers of his own, where he can basically memorize scenes and things that he's seen at these crime scenes. So this is very much a murder mystery. They find bodies that have trees that have erupted from the, basically through their bodies. That's how they died. And Din and Anna have to try to figure out what happened. And of course, there's the rich society. So you're getting like bits and pieces of like the royalty in this world. And it's so good. Anna is like the coolest character. She's so funny. And Din is just kind of like going along for the ride. And the comments that he makes, oh, the banter in this is just so good. I definitely want to reread this before the second book comes out. And I could not, like, initially, like, after I read this immediately, I said, this is probably going to be my favorite book of 2024. And nothing has beat it. Nothing has beat it. So, this is my favorite book of 2024. So that's it. This video is gonna be long, but I missed you guys. I missed you guys. What you been doing? Let me know in the comments. How you been? How's the end of your 2024? Are you looking forward to 2025? What's your most anticipated book of 2025? So I can see if it's on my list too. But I miss chatting with you guys. I've got some videos lined up, and yeah, so I hope you have a fantastic day. As always, thank you so much for stopping by. Please hit that like and subscribe button because I haven't been filming in a while, so I need some love. As always, I will see you guys again next time. See ya.